Thank you for tuning in to the Natty News Daily podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Core Nutritionals. You can check out corenutritionals.com for all your supplement needs and use code Natty News Daily at checkout to save 20%. Enjoy the episode.
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of Natty News Daily. This is going to be just a quick little chit chat about this coming weekend. Excuse me. WNBF Ontario, the show that myself, Dan, James, Leo, Charlotte, WNBF Canada, the whole crew are involved in the WNBF Ontario's first ever event. Pretty exciting, eh, Dano?
It'd be sweet, man.
Yeah, super cool. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk about it a little bit. Just spread the good word about it. The show is this weekend, so this episode's going to go live probably a day or two beforehand. That way, if people are unaware or maybe kind of have some questions about the event, hopefully we can answer them here. But as far as like the show itself, run under the WNBF through the WNBF Canada affiliates. Now, Dan and I were talking about how long this has been in the works, and this goes back to like 2020, I think is what I said beforehand, when I was originally in talks with WNBF Canada about like doing this, but then the whole world got screwy for a little while there and life got chaotic, so it ended up getting pushed back. I think we were looking at like 2021, and then things still were super up in the air. And then 2022, I competed in the spring, obviously turned pro within the WNBF, and then that's when kind of we started really getting the ball rolling and thinking, okay, 2023 we'll get things going. So here we are now. Just what's today as of recording? Today is Tuesday, so we're 4 days out from the show. Really eye-opening process, I guess you could say, as far as like what goes into running a show and organizing it. I think that was something that I was not like unknown to, but maybe like a little shook by how much actually goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you going back. It's not just like a couple month process too. I mean, you were scouting venues back in, what was that, April or so? Do you remember the time frame?
Oh yeah,
easily.
Easily like spring this year, if not like late last year, was like trying to figure out where the heck we were going to do it, because trying to find venues is probably been the hardest part, because like, I mean, we are competitors, we're spectators, we're fans of the sport, and like the venue can be a make or break thing. Venue and lighting obviously is kind of the big thing that can really like make it good or can make it really bad. So for us, it was trying to find something local to me, which was not super easy because I'm not in like a super big city where there's all kinds of venues potentially available. And I liked the idea of a theater, which is, I've competed in shows with that theater setting. So you have like the stage and then the elevated seating up. Dan, I think you've competed in shows like that, or at least been to shows like that, where it's like for the audience, it's that really nice, theater seating. For the judges, they're based at the bottom. For the athletes, you get that nice like viewpoint from the stage where you get to see everybody. And that aesthetic is usually really good, and you get good lighting. So that was where I kind of first looked. But any of the theaters around here, there was something that didn't work, whether it was the backstage area was too small. Like the one we looked at that I was really hoping to do, it had just a bunch of little corridors, because they're not used to needing like massive spaces for people. They kind of just have like your dressing rooms and then your hallways to the stage, which is obviously not ideal with a bunch of bodybuilders getting pumped up and stuff like that. Another theater, like there was no parking. So that's something that like you don't even think about. The venue could have been solid, but if there's no parking, then you're really kind of pooched. This one was like in the downtown area of the city that I live in. So there's not really any parking close. Like you get the odd spot on the road, but if not, you're walking, which as athletes, that's super inconvenient. As spectators, that's inconvenient. So that was out. So then it was looking at maybe like hotels or conference centers. The one that looked promising that was going to be able to house it all in one spot, the ceilings were too low. Again, something that under normal circumstances you don't really think about, but for bodybuilding, when you're putting a stage and you have people, with their arms up in the air posing and stuff like that, you've got to worry about ceiling height. So that was out. So then it ended up being at we've solidified it to a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a community center.
I was saying,
So
yeah.
yeah, like a rec center, right? So, big kind of central area with, pool, gymnasium, that kind of stuff. So we're holding it in the gymnasium, which gives us obviously plenty of ceiling height, plenty of room for staging, for seating. And then we'll have the lighting obviously casting down on the stage. So that was probably one of the biggest headaches, honestly, was trying to find a place to hold it, and which was a solid couple months trying to figure out where the heck we were going to do it.
Yeah, I know it was a frustrating process. I mean, especially for you. I mean, at some points I remember you're like, man, I don't know if I'm just have to pull the plug on this. Like every
Yeah,
venue I go to, it's just
for
so.
sure. For sure. And that's the thing, right? Like trying to keep it local to me where I have the accessibility to go to the venue and work with local businesses for sponsorships and local athletes. Like that was the whole point of this, was to keep it somewhere in my neck of the woods where we could do a lot of, hopefully at the time, a lot of good work to make it a really good event. If it was going to be further away from me, then it really hampers my ability to check it out and that kind of stuff. Like, there was nights where Carrie and I, my wife, we were working till 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then we were driving 40 minutes to go check out a venue. 40 minutes is not close, but it's not super far. So if all of a sudden that turns into like 2-hour drive to try to find a decent venue, like that just gets,
Yeah.
Logistically it gets hard to do. So thankfully we were able to find something and make it work. And I've been at shows that have been housed in rec centers before, and they've done a good job. So that's why I was not like hesitant on it, because I've seen it done well. So I was pretty confident that we were going to be able to pull it off decently. So that was like something that was surprising as far as like difficulty goes. The other thing that I think I've learned is not my strong suit is like finding sponsors outside of like my initial list of people that I just had already pre-existing connections with. Dan, me, you, and James have talked about this, where it's like, for me, it's like, okay, who have I worked with before? Who do I have connections with within the fitness space or business realm that I'm tight with, that would have any inclination of being involved with it? And having those conversations wasn't hard, but for me to try to then reach out to other businesses and promote it and present an offer, it was just not my strong suit. I did not have that script nailed down whatsoever.
But I mean, it's it's one of those things you learn, and you have a good network, to start. But and you touched on it, before we started recording, about how you almost have your whole network almost contributing in some way, shape, or form to the show. But I mean, I think you do have a large network. I think you're underselling yourself a little bit in what you have, had already pre-existing and to contribute. But yeah, what do you think about?
James, what's up?
Hey, James.
Present.
You get the children in bed or what?
The children are asleep for now. We'll see. I gotta find wood. Knock on wood. Yes. I'm
Anyways,
here.
we were just
I'm
talking
kind of
how chaotic it was for me to find a venue and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which was surprisingly difficult, right?
Yeah.
You would think, well, and here's the thing too, like we have a higher standard for what we wanted our venue to be. And I'm saying like it's your show. Obviously you did 99.9% of the work. uh, but yeah, you had a higher standard. But it was interesting to see some of the people that didn't want to work with you, or spaces that just simply wouldn't work because of the size that we were kind of expecting. But yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely thought that was going to be like one of the easier things. Just reach out to some convention center or whatever, and oh yeah, there it is.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's not something that I think a lot of people would think about. They're like, oh, bodybuilding shows just run shows in places and people are all gung ho to host them. And that is not the case, people. It's a lot more of a headache. And, thankfully, whether or not it was the case or not, we got a decent price. Like, I don't know if it was a connection based price or what the deal is, but finding venues is not a cheap venture either. Like, that's where you can really, if you have a budget between venue and lighting, like you can take a large chunk of that budget and spend it immediately. And, that's something where I'm confident that we have like a solid lighting setup, but I've been to shows where I've talked to the promoter that dropped 12 grand on their lighting rig. And I'm like that blew my mind. And again, like he's got good connections with a lot more sponsors, again, which helps offset the pricing. And again, that's built up over time. They've been doing this show for well over a decade, I think. But like lighting, that's something that everybody and their mom talks about. Like, I wish the bodybuilding shows had better lighting or good lighting or this or that and the other. And this gave me a bit more of a perspective and like respect for his shit ain't cheap, right? And not everybody can drop 12. I mean, we didn't drop $12,000 on a lighting rig that, if your budget's 20 grand for a show, for example, you're over half that just to get some lights on. Which is
and that's where certain venues kind of like, I'm thinking like Mr. A, right? Like all that's in house, which makes things nice. You're probably paying a premium ticket, but so much is already taken care of for you, where other places you have to bring in the light, you have to bring in the audio, you have to build the stage, all those other things, and that just kind of whittles away at things.
That was my whole thing. We were talking, I don't think you were on yet, but talking about trying to find like a theater, right? So the staging is already, like you said, the staging is done. They've got the lighting because they have plays and all that kind of stuff already done. Probably got some microphones in house and some speakers. So a lot of those things you could check off. And like you said, maybe you pay a bit more of a premium, but if you're paying $10,000 and all of that is done versus $8,000 on lighting, $3,000 on a venue, $2,000 on audio, well, now you're trying to, not only are you now getting more work to put it all together, but it's probably costing more. So that was something that I think was an interesting learning experience with running a show. The thing that I think we had on our side was social media. I think between our networks, between WNBF Canada's networks, between the WNBF network, between Natty News Daily, I think we were able to get a lot of eyes on it that maybe otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that's part of why the turnout is so solid, especially within the bodybuilding division. This is something we've talked about, but for those listening, the bodybuilding division is our biggest division at this show. We have bodybuilding, men's physique, and bikini. Unfortunately, not a huge female presence, which was interesting, especially locally. There's a lot of female competitors, but I think with the WNBF name and its kind of more traditional bodybuilding following and kind of take on it, and then our networks within the bodybuilding community especially, I think that got a lot of people. We've got people traveling internationally, which is super cool. A lot of local talent that I'd never seen compete until this kind of jumped up. So I think that's something that was useful for us, which I know not a lot of people have the luxury for. So I'm very grateful that we had that kind of social pull, if you could say.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if you look at the demographics of our followers on the page, right, it's vastly the male dominated, vastly bodybuilding, right? So it just kind of makes sense that the show would reflect that to some degree. But I'm sure, hopefully, all things run well, all things go smoothly, people see a good show, good venue, hear good things, that's just going to grow, right? All those divisions we don't have this year, you might continue to see, expand in the years to come.
Yeah. We're also offering, because I know a lot of people are wondering about the classic physique category, which is why I kind of push to have some presence of that. I know some people aren't a huge fan of classic physique within natural bodybuilding, but you can't deny its popularity. You can't deny that at some level there is some differences physique to physique, whether it's as stark as in the enhanced side of the sport, definitely not. But we've been to shows where you can see your open bodybuilder next to your classic physique champion, and there's definitely some differences. So within, where I'm from, specifically Ontario, the classic physique division vastly outweighs the bodybuilding division as far as popularity, numbers, registration, all that kind of stuff. So from a business perspective, which at the end of the day, running a show is still a business, it makes sense to offer it in some form. So we offered and created the Mr. Classic Ontario, which is kind of its own little side gig to open bodybuilding. So any of the open bodybuilding athletes that wanted to register for that The judging will be different, and that's something that I really like pressed for Leo, who's one of the head judges, who's the president of WNBF Canada, is that I want to make sure that there's a difference, that the judging is reflecting of what we would probably all agree a classic physique to be. So not necessarily as heavily muscled, more aesthetics, more lines. We have specific classic poses that will be judged, which I know not every classic physique division does in every organization, which I think is something that more should do. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If you're going to judge classic physique, and let's take the IFBB, NPC, CPA, they do front double bicep, just the same as the open class. They do side chest, just the same. Back double, just the same. Ab and thigh, just the same. And then they offer classic pose of choice at the very end. So really, outside of like some posing differences within the pose, they're basically judging all the same poses. And there's no real specifications whether, you know, they're looking for differences between the two divisions, between classic and open. So I said to Leo, and you know, when we were starting this out, I was like, all right, well, let's get some classic poses in there that are actually going to be judged. So all the athletes are still going to go through all the mandatory poses, because at the end of the day, it's still bodybuilding. But we've added the twisting back double bicep, which most can probably picture Arnold in their head popularizing that pose. The classic side tricep, when you turn the body, hit the quad. A lot of the top guys with yeah, that's a popular one. A vacuum pose of choice, and then the teacup pose, which is the hand on the hip, bicep. Again, a pretty widespread classic pose. So those are going to be judged within the Mr. Classic Ontario division, which I think is going to be good because it can really separate that classic look, right? Like a lot of people can hit those main mandatory poses well across the open and the classic divisions. But then if you say, okay, like who's got the best vacuum, who's got the best classic flow within those classic poses, then you can start to separate the two, which I think is going to be good for people to see. And that's exactly what I wanted out of the division. We've got a cool trophy too, which I think is going to excite people a lot.
Yeah, and I think was it the WNBF UK was the first ones to kind of spearhead introducing that as a spinoff, right?
Yeah, they started it out there from my understanding, and then we've seen the WNBF UAE offer it as well, with actual like divisions from what I've seen, which is even more of a stretch than what we're doing. We're just doing like a little side hustle, but I think they offered like a tall and a short maybe, or something to that effect. And again, like if you look at the winner of that division, we posted it on the Natty News page. Like that's classic. Like it, you know, he's got the different trunks, which can decipher it from open bodybuilding. But if you look at, I think his front lat spread or whatever I posted, it's got that classic look, right? Like we can all agree on that. And I should dig through and try to find the open winner and put them side by side, because I would expect to see some differences, which is exactly what I want this to reflect as well. It would take a perfect physique across the board to win our bodybuilding overall and win the classic title. Like that would be a phenomenal athlete, but I don't expect we will see that, and we shouldn't for most cases.
Yeah, if it's judged correctly, if there's differentiating criteria and poses, you should be able to tell the difference. And that's a discussion we've even had like within ourselves for like where we best fit in the criteria, right? Because Dan and I both have competed in the OCB in both aspects. Yeah, and it should be different. It looks different. And they, I think, right, we have no comparison for the WNBF beyond these like small shows that pop up, but the OCB does a very good job of differentiating, right? You look at their champs in the classic, or like top 5 at Yorton for classic and top 5 Yorton bodybuilding, very, very different physiques.
No, for sure. And that's the way it should be, right? And again, you can't deny the popularity of the division. So we wanted to somewhat honor that and give people a platform to compete. And I think it would have done us a disservice to not offer it in some form or another. Because I remember at the very beginning when we created the WNBF Ontario Instagram page and we were talking about it and throwing the odd post up here and there, undoubtedly I was getting asked, will there be classic? Will there be classic? Will there be classic? And a lot of it was from people that weren't familiar with the WNBF and unknowingly didn't know they didn't have the division or whatever case it may be. And, I think it would have really put a hamper on our potential locally, especially to not offer it in some form or another. And I know a lot of people are excited about it. A lot of people are excited that we're asking specific poses and that the posing will be judged. The routines will be judged. Like that kind of stuff, I think is exciting to a lot of people that enjoy that division and would like to see it more legitimized in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed.
Agreed.
We'll just see. We'll
Sure.
see who shows up. I mean, we know the names obviously, but seeing them on stage will be different side by side.
Yeah. For those watching this, for any of my clients especially, because I know where you all have competed, this will be the most competitive bodybuilding show you will do. So any of my boys watching this in the bodybuilding division especially, you better be practicing your posing. Men's physique, bikini, they're always competitive. They're always very big classes. The bodybuilding is super hit and miss. I've had clients in shows where there's been 3 or 4 or 5 bodybuilders within the entire division. We're going to have 6, 7, 8 per class. So it's going to be a battle up there.
3 class, right?
Yeah. Light, middle, heavy. We'll see kind of where people fall once registration happens, but whoever walks away with that overall title this weekend will very much be deserving of that. And I very much think they will have a bright future within the sport because there's the lineup across all classes, lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight. I've seen who's registered. I've done some Instagram research, and there's talent across not just in bodybuilding in general, but like across every division at this show. There's a lot of really good people coming through, which I think our average. If you were to look at every athlete and their average as far as quality goes, we have a strong average across the entire show. There's obviously going to be outliers that are super, super good and some that need a lot of work. But I think a lot of our competitors will be that kind of like mid-tier where it's like you could go places if you keep doing this, right? Which is obviously super exciting because we've been to shows where the talent pool is such a vast array. I think we're going to see a lot of really good people come through the stage across bodybuilding, across men's physique, and across bikini.
Yeah, there's going to be people outside of the top 3 in their class in this show that would win another show for sure, from what I've seen.
Oh yeah, like there's speaking for my clients, I've got 10 and all of them are really, really looking to do well. But then the last couple weeks being at some shows, I've seen also competitors that are competing at this one and have done warm-up shows to get to this stage, and I've seen them in person. And a lot of good people are coming to this show, which is obviously really cool. At the end of the day, the 3 of us are fans of this sport. So to see good athletes just hit the stage is obviously a buzz. And then to be on a stage that we've created is even more of a buzz. So I think that's something that, the last couple of days I've been able to absorb and digest. We did this we did this because of the whole reason we've started Natty News Daily. The whole reason we do what we do is we just want to see natural bodybuilding just flourish. And this is something that I didn't know we were going to be able to do in the capacity we have, but I'm really proud of what we've built and what will happen this weekend. I think it's going to be super cool.
I'm honestly a little bit bummed I'm not going to get to watch most of the show. I'm going to be backstage yelling at people and I'm going to try and peek my head out more. But that's the biggest bummer for me is all these awesome athletes are showing up and I'll see them backstage, but I won't get to see much of the show. Unless I'm going to just fill in, be grab someone and be hey, stand here, do my job, 5 minutes.
We've got no shortage of volunteers, so that can be arranged.
Yes.
It's our show. Do what you want. Just delegate.
Yeah.
You stranger, hold this paper and point at number 82. Tell him to get in line.
Yeah.
It's probably Marley. Marley, if you're watching this, get in line. And take your flip-flops off.
Yeah. Forgot about that. No, he did. He did it. Leroy showed. Yeah, didn't he?
Yeah, man.
That's great.
I love that boy to death, but man, he gets scatterbrained backstage. One thing I want to mention too, I put this up on my story the other day, and Dan and I were talking about it before we come on, but I had this thought that it's kind of surreal what is going to happen this weekend. So for those watching, this is going to be hosted in my hometown. I've since moved from there, but it's not far from home. So it's still my hometown. It's where I grew up. And I will be doing it with, obviously, my boys here at Natty News Daily. My wife's had a part of it. Leo and Charlotte have had a part of it through WNBF Canada. Body Systems, the other company that I work for, has an involvement. BIHC is a physio clinic that I used to go to back home that's involved with it. I have clients that have been with me since 2019, since I started my whole online coaching business, that are stepping on this stage. So it's just a real like feel good moment for me, which I didn't have time to process till just a day or two ago with organizing everything. So I just super grateful to have all that. To have friends and family there watching obviously is going to be really cool. And it's weird how life works sometimes, because it was a headache to get here at times, but I'm glad we made it.
Yeah.
We'll try to soak it in as best as possible, right?
It's gonna go quick, right? Like it's just like any other
It is.
show day. Like people wish prep to be over, and then all of a sudden they wake up Sunday morning and they're like, "Whoa, I competed yesterday." And I know that's exactly how this is gonna go. It's Tuesday now. I'm gonna wake up. It's gonna be Friday morning. We're gonna get everybody going on stage. Intermission. Girls will go. Then it'll be done, and we'll be sitting there going, "Well, shit, we just ran our first show. Cool." Like, you know what I
It's
mean?
gonna-
Like it's nuts.
Same thing as Mr. A, right? Last year, it
Yeah.
kind of didn't hit you until you're there and you're like sitting at a table and people are like treating you like some sort of, I don't
Like
know,
we know what
you
we're
mean,
doing.
like you mean something, right? Hand you a microphone and say, just talk for 10 hours.
You want us
Yeah.
to talk for 10
Yeah.
hours? Have you listened to our podcast?
Yeah. And then, we sat at dinner and we're like, oh shit. Like, did we just do that? Did we just do a live commentary for, it was awesome. So I feel like it's going to be the same thing. You like sit down at dinner after the fact and be like, oh, we did it. Look at that.
Yeah. That's cool.
And then drive home all the way. Much farther for Dan, but
Yeah. James and I are gonna get up at 4 a.m. on Sunday, get a lift in, and then run on all the caffeine.
I always do anyway, so that's okay.
Awesome. I appreciate all you guys that have supported through this journey. And if you guys have questions about the show, obviously it's Tuesday, probably Wednesday by the time you're watching this. But if you have questions, message either one of us, message the WNBF Ontario Instagram page. And if you're watching this and you're competing this weekend, we wish you luck. We shall see you soon. If you're not, please support us, support Natty News Daily, support the WNBF, just support natural bodybuilding. That's all we're trying to do here. We appreciate the love, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you in Canada.